mode.
Hello and welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Alec McCutcheon. I'm a Director of Unicom and we're delighted to be hosting today's webinar, which is on modern incident response best practices for DevOps. And I'm very pleased to introduce today's presenter, who's Matt Livermore. Matt is a Senior Solutions Consultant at PagerDuty. He's got more than 15 years experience of designing, deploying and operating complex IT solutions in both corporate and public sector environments. He's a technical evangelist with a proven track record of helping small and big enterprises adopt new technologies and processes to gain a business advantage. So I think you're in really great hands today with Matt, and I hope you find today's webinar valuable. Just to let you know, there will be an opportunity for questions at the end, so please feel free to type questions in the chat box and we'll endeavour to answer as many as possible. So now without further ado, I would like to hand over to Matt.
Thanks, Alec. Yeah, so let's start with a bit of context. Why have you got a guy from PagerDuty talking to you about incident response? For those who don't know, PagerDuty is the market-leading digital operations platform. And so far, we've helped about 13,000 customers accelerate their digital transformations, increase the pace of innovation, and start reacting in real time to new opportunities and challenges. Our founders of the company were originally engineers at Amazon just when the DevOps movement was just getting started. What they quickly realized was that in order to maximize the value of implementing DevOps and to make it sustainable, they needed new tools. And also, if you're thinking about full service ownership and putting people on call, the ability to actually protect your most important asset, your people. What we've subsequently recognized over the last 10 years is that if you want to move at pace and deploy with confidence, you also need to know how people are going to react when inevitably something breaks. So, the aim of today's session is actually to give you an understanding of how to effectively manage incidents within your organization. To be absolutely clear, this isn't a sales pitch. What I actually want to do is talk to you about how PagerDuty actually manage incidents within our own environment. The idea is to introduce you to, lots of practical information that you can take away afterwards back to your own organizations where you can either start or start to improve your own processes. The whole point of incident response is to replace chaos with calm. Chaos and panic lead to confusion, and that's a path that leads to longer delays. The thing you want most, or the least I should say, when customers are impacted and people can't get hold of your products. We want to, you guys to be following a smooth and a streamlined process, yeah? So the whole point of incident response, as you can see on the screen, is that it's about having an organized approach to addressing and managing an incident. And the key word there is organized. It may surprise you that, incident response isn't just about solving the problem. Give 1,000 monkeys 1,000 keyboards and enough time, they'll fix any problem. What we're actually interested in is, handling the situation in a way that limits the damage and reduces the recovery time and costs. And we're not just talking about costs in terms of financial costs. We're also talking about the human cost. Waking people up constantly every night or getting them to context switch during the day as alerts keep getting fired off is counterproductive. It destroys productivity, and generally what we've found is it makes people really miserable. Before we can actually get into talking around incident response though, the best starting place for those of you that don't actually have an incident response process is to start by actually defining what we mean by an incident. If we don't understand what an incident is, it's very hard to know whether or not to respond to it. As you can see on the screen now, for us, an incident is where we have an unplanned disruption or degradation of our service that is actually affecting customers' ability to use our product. That's actually quite a broad definition. That can be anything from a typo in a line of code through to a major outage on our website. So what we also have is a definition for a major incident. For us, a major incident is an incident that requires coordinated response across multiple teams. And again, the focus is on the coordination element. At PagerDuty, we also use severities. So here, probably a similar looking graph. A lot of you are probably tracking metrics around the health of websites and so forth. And the idea is, as the metrics we're tracking degrade, we move from one severity level to another. The key thing to point out here for us is that when we switch from a Sev 3 to a Sev 2, that's where we declare a major incident. You may call it other things. I mean, I've got customers that call it P1, P2, so forth. Doesn't really matter. The idea is you've got this sliding scale. One of our recommendations, if you're tracking metrics, is that you try and tie them to a business outcome. For us, that means that we can actually then use automation in order to determine the level of severity. However, there is an important point. While we love monitoring tools and we're all about automation, we have retained the ability whereby anyone inside our organization can trigger an instant response at any time. The reason for this is that we've found this greatly improves our ability to respond and fix things. Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's an intern first week in, or it's a janitor that spots an issue on a graph and thinks that it doesn't look quite right. We want anyone to be able to flag a potential situation. You know, the idea is to get to it before it becomes a customer impacting event. And what we also know is that while monitoring tools are great and you can set them up to track a lot of issues, they're more than likely always going to miss the edge cases. That's where humans add real value. You know, they're great at pattern matching. Once an incident's actually been triggered, for us, what it's all about then is the mental shift. The idea that you're moving from day-to-day operations to defending the business. And something, you know, that previously you might have thought was unacceptable, for example, deploying code without running tests, now becomes completely acceptable while you're trying to restore service quickly. So in summary, the way you operate, your role hierarchy, the level of risk you're willing to take will all change as you make that shift. On the screen you'll see at the moment we call it peacetime and wartime. You can name it whatever you like. It can be okay, not okay, you know, it doesn't matter. The fundamental thing is you make that shift. So now let's talk a little bit more about the process itself. We didn't actually make this up. What we did is we took an existing system, something called the Incident Command System, which is often abbreviated to ICS. ICS was developed after a series of devastating wildfires in Southern California in 1970. And the one observation they made at the time was that although thousands of firefighters responded and they were all, you know, very good at putting out fires individually, they lacked a common framework that allowed them to work together in a larger group. Yeah. So what we're actually after is, you know, making sure that everyone understands there's a standardized response that everyone can follow during a major incident. That's what incident response is all about. So, without further ado, I now want to sort of drop into the role hierarchy that we use within PagerDuty, all the people, all the moving parts. This is going to look a little bit complex as I build it out now. Key point to take away from this is that it's a scalable hierarchy. It can be tuned to the size of your business and it can grow with your business. So if I just build this out on the quick, there's command, liaisons, and subject matter experts. So we'll start at the top. First role is the incident commander. This is the most important role within the hierarchy for incident response. This person is the one that makes all decisions. Nothing happens without their say-so. Beneath them, I've got a deputy and a scribe. The deputy is effectively a backup incident commander, someone that can step in if the incident commander needs to step away for a minute. It's also someone that can take on some of the load if the incident you're working becomes more complex and needs another set of eyes. The scribe, meanwhile, their primary role is logging an accurate timeline for what's happening during the incident. They don't do that verbatim, they're literally looking to capture the options that are available and the decisions that get made. Inside PagerDuty, when we first started, we just had the incident commander. Later we followed that with a scribe, and more recently we've adopted the deputy role. A lot of organizations I work with will actually merge the deputy and scribe role together, again, to reduce the headcount. Below that command staff, you can see I have liaisons, a customer liaison and an internal liaison. In our case, the customer liaison is a member of our support staff, and their primary role is to deal with communications with our customers. They also have a secondary role whereby they'll be tracking the number of tickets that customers are opening. This is a fantastic metric to have during an incident. It gives you another business metric so that you can track just how badly your business has been impacted, and that may well steer you down a different path of action. More recently, we've also introduced the internal liaison to deal with executives and other key stakeholders within our business. But again, previously, that role would have been dealt with by the person that was also the deputy and the scribe. And then finally, at the bottom on this organizational chart, you'll see the subject matter experts. These are the doers, the fixers, the people logging into servers, actually fixing stuff. As I said, what I want to do now is I want to focus on the incident commander role. It's the most important one, and it's the key takeaway really from this session. So, who is the incident commander? As I said earlier, it's the most important role. They are, as we call it, the grand fromage. Nothing happens without their say-so. They are in control, and the buck stops with them. It says there, they are the single source of truth. Nothing goes out anywhere without them first approving it. And during the incident, they become the highest authority. Yes, even above the CEO. But a word of caution. Make sure the CEO knows first before you try implementing this. You need exec buy-in to do this. But it's absolutely critical during a major incident that the incident commander is the only one making decisions and that they are controlling the situation. Key to the incident commander role is to also acknowledge the fact that the incident commander is not a resolver. They're not looking at graphs, they're not checking logs or servers, they are purely there to coordinate and delegate actions. Think of them as the sort of the conductor within an orchestra. My brother-in-law is actually a firefighter. He's actually a station commander. He gets to wear the white hat. And there's actually a saying they have whereby if the station commander or the watch commander is walking around with a wrench in his hand, you should take it off him and hit him with it. For very much the same reason as the incident commander should not be trying to fix issues. As soon as you do that, you lose sight of the big picture. And ultimately, that's what the incident commander is there to do. Oh dear, what's happened? Looks like we might have an incident. First thing, don't panic. When all the alarms start going off, when the phone starts ringing and all that sort of stuff, the natural response is to panic. The adrenaline starts pumping, it's fight or flight. That's great if you're in the wilderness, not so good if you're trying to orchestrate a response to a technical issue on your platform. Again, going back to the firefighter analogy, if your house is burning down, you're a mess. But then the fire service turn up and they're a trained group of professionals. They know exactly what they're doing, and as a result, they put you at rest, and more importantly, they put out the fire as efficiently as fast as possible. Exactly the same with the incident commander and the rest of the response team. It's about that calm, orderly approach that ultimately means you recover faster. So, how do we actually kick off a call? Well, here we go. I'm Matt, and I'm the incident commander. There's a couple of things to note in the way that I've addressed everyone else on the call. First of all, I'm introducing myself, and I'm using my name. This is all about psychology. So I'm trying to make it so that people don't see me as an emotionless robot. I've not called myself the IC, the incident commander. I'm Matt. However, what I've then done is I've said I am the incident commander. Again, this has a psychological impact. It's basically instilling in people the idea that I'm in charge. Another key point. Good communication is essential during an incident. What you don't want is this. It may be quicker to say, let's get the IC on the RC, then get a BLT for all the SMEs. But really, does everyone actually know what that means? it does it. What we say, it adds cognitive overhead. People have got to figure out what those abbreviations are, and it's not always the case that they're going to necessarily know what that is, especially if you're dealing with third parties or people that haven't been within your organization for a long period of time. So as a result, clear is better than concise. It's better to spend 30 seconds being very clear about what you're expecting rather than just trying to get something out rapidly. So after the introductions, first thing we do is we ask what's wrong. Yeah, we call this sizing up. And what we're trying to do is scope out the incident. The next thing the incident commander will do is they'll ask, what actions can we take? Again, this is key. The IC is not there to come up with a solution. There are hopefully by now a whole bunch of experts on the line as well. It's their job to come up with recommendations. Next thing we do is we ask what are the risks involved with each of those suggestions. Again, we want to weigh up the different approaches to fixing this issue. So for example, I'll give you an extreme example. On the one hand, I could start a rolling reboot of my servers, which would be non-disruptive, or alternatively, I can just reboot everything at once. Probably get me back in 30 seconds rather than 30 minutes. However, the risk that's involved is that if I do that quick reboot of everything at once, I'm probably going to cause an outage. And customers are going to know about it even if they didn't know beforehand. So again, understand the risk will actually drive your decision-making process and hopefully means that you'll make the best possible decision given the information at hand at that time. Talking of decisions, the most important thing is that you make one. Yeah, indecision, analysis paralysis is something else that we want to avoid. It's actually probably worth pointing out that making the wrong decision is actually better than making no decision, because at least at the end of the day, you've got more information that helps you drive a way forward. Yeah. The next thing, once we've got an action, we're all agreed on what it's going to be, you need to gain consensus. While the IC is, the person that makes the decision ultimately and has to carry the buck, for whatever decision is made, you want to avoid the hindsight 2020 problem where people come back later and tell you what's going on. But again, there's a way to gain consensus and there's a way not to do it. The way we do it is we ask, are there any strong objections? 99% of the time, you won't have any and you can move forward very fast. It's a very efficient way of getting consensus rather than going around on the call and asking everybody individually. The other thing is, if you ask it in that way, you don't need to remember to ask absolutely everyone on the call. Again, it's simpler. It's less for you to have to remember while you're in the middle of an incident. So there we go. Are there any strong objections? The focus is on the word strong. Again, we don't care if people have got minor objections. Ultimately, we're trying to drive this to resolution as fast as possible. So we've got consensus, we've got an action, we're all looking good. The next worst thing you can do is ask, can someone do something? Yeah. At PagerDuty, we do it like this. So for example, you'd say, Eric, I'd like you to investigate the increased latency, try and find the cause. I'll come back to you in 5 minutes. Understood. Then hopefully Eric comes back with understood. So what have I done there? I've been very specific about the assignment of the task. I've also time-boxed it. So the person that I've allocated the task knows that I want something from them within a given period of time. It's not, oh, well, you can do it next week. I want it in 5 minutes. And finally, I got Eric to acknowledge at the end that he understands. I've been on way too many calls in the past where I've given out an instruction, forgot to ask for acknowledgement, and I come back 5 minutes later, it's like, oh, was that what you meant? You've now just lost another 5 minutes. So again, coming back to the whole clarity thing, it's also making sure that people comprehend what you're asking for and know that you're going to be coming back to them very shortly. So here we go. Eric, it's been 5 minutes. Do you have any information on the latency issue? Yes, it looks like it was a bad firewall rule. Happy days. But that's not always the case. Especially during a major sort of incident, It'll be more complex, and it's more than likely that you're going to need more time, or your SMEs are going to need more time. The key point here is you ask the SME, how much time do they need? And also remember, this isn't the movies. You're not trying to second guess them. You're not trying to cut that time in half. So, if Eric's asked for 20, I'm not going to go back and say, you've only got 10. Get on with it. The reason for that is, again, we actually record all of our sort of major incidents, and we review them afterwards in the postmortem. That sort of thing, it can be incredibly demotivating for the SMEs. They're working hard already. The last thing you want to do is make it sound like you think they're not working hard enough. So again, you have to place trust in your SMEs. So we've sort of got a process, and you see how we've worked through it. That process is actually cyclical while we're actually trying to stabilize the incident. And this is the full cycle. So we ask for status, we decide on actions and gain consensus, we assign the task, and then we follow up. And we keep going through that until we stabilize the issue. So this process that we've just seen actually fits inside a wider or more generalized instant process, whereby we start with the size up, we stabilize, and we keep going until we do stabilize. Then we push out an update, and then finally we verify we've actually fixed the problem. If we haven't, we go back to sizing up. Otherwise, we can move forwards, and it looks like the issue's resolved. Oh, what have I got now? Ignore the IC, do what I say. Looks like we've got an executive joining the call. This is I say this isn't actually that common. We don't see that very often, but it does happen. The point is, as an incident commander, you need to be able to deal with this type of intervention. The way we deal with it is with a simple question. Do you want to take command? More often than not, people love to give you suggestions, but very rarely do they actually want to be responsible for them. Once you hear nothing, you can proceed as normal. Alternatively, if they say they do want to command, then it's great. You can then advise everyone that, let's say Bob in this case is taking over, and as a result, you can now step away from the call, and it's on there. We call this the executive swoop. Yeah, but there are other sort of ways in which this can happen. So for example, this is another classic we do see. Let's try and resolve this in 10 minutes. A bit like me trying to second guess my SMEs earlier on, we found this to be incredibly demotivating to people that are trying to fix the issue. Everyone is, busting a gut, trying to get things fixed. This doesn't help. Again, it's the incident commander's job at this stage to actually control the situation and make sure that it doesn't demotivate the team. So as an example, we used to see this is how we tend to deal with these. We're in the middle of the incident, please keep the comments until the end. Another one we get, can I get a spreadsheet of all the affected customers? That's great, and it's an expected question from an account manager or someone else in the line of business, a product owner. But ultimately, the way we deal with this one is like this. We can either get you that list or fix the incident, not both. The incident takes priority. There's something critical to point out here. So I'm being courteous, but I'm not giving anyone the choice over what we're going to do. We are going to fix the priority. The list is going to wait. Yeah, that's me reasserting myself. Another great one that I see a lot. Is this really a Sev 1? Again, you do not want to be debating the level of severity during an incident. When we first started doing this, probably around about 2011, 2012, we would sit there and we'd start debating these things, and it was like, is this a P3 or P4? Well, I can guarantee you one thing, 10 minutes later, it's going to be a P1. So as a result, just deal with it. And again, we have a very strict way of dealing with this. We do not discuss incident severity during the call. We're treating this as a Sev 1. Yeah. So another thing, just to note out, takeaway for you at this stage. Make sure you do keep your product owners, key stakeholders aware of what's going on. Notify them. What we've found within PagerDuty is that a good cadence is somewhere between every 20 and 30 minutes. And as a result of that, what you do is you're effectively going to preempt a lot of these executive swoop scenarios. If they are kept abreast of what's going on, they feel less compelled to jump onto the line and disrupt the resolution process. But there are other areas where you can be disrupted. So for example, the belligerent responder. Internally we call this the drunk engineer. I'm going to put that on the screen though. Again, this happens. Again, there is a very simple way of dealing with it. You're being disruptive, please stop or I'll have to remove you from the call. Again, the phrasing is very particular. I will have to remove you. It's not I'm going to remove you. It's the decision's been taken out of my hands. This is the process, I have to follow it. So I'm trying not to make it personal. I'm trying not to be confrontational, but at the same time I'm letting people know I will kick them off the call because ultimately we are here to fix the problem. It's important to know, it doesn't just have to be a drunk responder. If you've got a lot of people on the call, I've even been in a situation where it's just background noise, where people feel they're compelled to stay on the line, but then decide they want to go and do their housework. So you've got a vacuum cleaner in the background. Equally disruptive if people can't clearly communicate on the line and you need to deal with it quickly. So, moving swiftly on. Do responders get tired? Absolutely. I can remember on one occasion many years ago where I was on an incident for more than 24 hours without a break. By the end of that 24 hours, I couldn't type anymore, let alone make a sensible decision about anything. So as a result, internally, we do handovers. Yeah, as you can see here, handovers are actively encouraged. Within PagerDuty, as a general rule, we hand over every 90 minutes. You can do it less or more frequently. It's a personal choice. But anything beyond, say, 3 or 4 hours, and you're really going to be starting to see people suffering from fatigue. They won't make the best decision. So that's just something to be aware of if your teams are big enough. So again, we have a process for how we do handovers. Here you can see mine. So everyone on the call, be advised I'm handing over command to Eric. And again, I'm looking for acknowledgement. So it's up to Eric to come back with, I'm now the incident commander, so that everyone else knows. And if you follow this process, hopefully what will happen, maybe it might take 1 cycle or maybe 2 or 3, you'll get to the stage where everything is resolved. We can all go home, right? Absolutely not. Don't forget the postmortem. Again, we have a very strong DevOps background at PagerDuty, and we are religious about learning from their major incidents. You know, that's how we improve our stability and our availability statistics. It's how we continually improve our processes. Absolutely critical. And on top of that, the next thing, practice makes perfect. Now again, depending on the size of your organization, not everyone can say, you know, embark on a chaos project or a chaos monkey project, say like Netflix do. We certainly don't have that level of engineering capability within PagerDuty. Instead, we do a failure Friday type scenario. So ahead of time, we plan which part of the infrastructure we're going to break. We then get everyone in a room, and then on that Friday, we'll tear it down. And because everyone's in the room, hopefully we know what's going to happen, but if it doesn't, we've got everyone there and we can actually treat it as an incident. The idea being that, again, it starts to build that muscle memory so people know what to do and when. So, just on the quick as we start to wrap up, here's the key takeaways for you in one slide. First of all, have an incident commander. Yeah. Secondly, being clear in your communication is better than being concise. Remember that catchphrase, strong objections. It's a fantastic way of gaining consensus really fast, and it will take minutes and probably hours out of your response process if you can do that frequently. Remember, assign tasks to individuals. It's a standard practice that every project manager knows. You know, if you give someone a task and they take ownership of it, they'll do it. If you don't, then everyone else will sit there and they'll wait, hoping that someone else is going to do it instead. And again, as a result, you'll hemorrhage time. Next step, or next point, keep stakeholders notified. You know, again, it makes for a much smoother instant response process, and it gives a much better experience, you know, customer experience. I'm talking about internal customers as much as external ones. Remember, hand over regularly. You'll make much better results if people are fresh and not fatigued. And as I said, don't forget the postmortem. It's the most important thing once the business is back up and running. So with a couple of minutes that I had left, I thought I'd spend a bit of time going through some anti-patterns. So what we found doesn't work, which on first thought you think might do. So getting everyone on a call. If you're a small organization, you might end up with everyone on a call anyway. But if you get beyond, say, 50 people, that actually starts to add a level of overhead. And more importantly, you start to destroy the productivity within your business. And you incur additional charges. So for example, if I've got 50 people on a call and they're all costing, say, £100 an hour, then if you've got most of those people sitting on that call doing nothing for an hour, then 100 times 100, we're talking about £10,000 an hour of staff time you're effectively wasting. The next point is not letting responders leave. If you've got someone onto the call, you've dragged them in, woken them up, whatever, if they're no longer needed, let them know. Again, there's a rule to note here is when we let people go, we don't tell individuals who can leave, just in case we forget someone. We tell people that we want to stay, but they have to stay. Again, it's a more efficient way of managing the team that's come to assist within the incident response process. Next point down, too high a frequency of status updates. Again, many years ago, I was in a situation where I was giving updates basically every 5 minutes. I was spending more time writing status updates to key stakeholders than I was actually fixing the problem. Again, it's counterproductive. And as I said earlier, what we found, and this seems to be almost becoming a bit of an industry standard, somewhere between 20 and 30 minutes is more than frequent enough. As an IC, the next point is very critical. It's not about not being overly focused on the issue. Remember, the idea is to stay, with the bigger picture. Next one down, require all ICs to be deeply technical. That's where we started from. And we found a couple of things. First of all, it's very difficult to recruit only technical ICs. And the other problem was once we actually had deeply technical ICs is that we've noticed that they had a tendency to rush in and try and fix the problem. The one thing you don't want an incident commander doing. Next one down, another great one. Allowing responders to take on multiple roles. People as a general rule, especially during a high stress situation, do not multitask particularly well. If you want to maintain a streamlined process, if you want to be as efficient as possible, don't allow it to happen. Then the next one down is discussing or litigating the policy during an incident. It's really not the time and place. If you've got a policy, if you've got a process, follow it. Come back to it in the postmortem. And then finally, off the back of the postmortem, don't be averse to process changes. All too often when I first turn up to discuss PagerDuty with a customer and we talk about changing processes, the default response is, we've always done it this way. We don't need to change. But the thing to remember is that your business, your infrastructure, your systems, they're organic. They will morph over time as your marketplace changes, as your business requirements change. So as a result, your processes will need to change as well. Final slide for me today. If you found this useful, then please take a look at the following URL. We've actually open sourced our entire incident response process. You'll find lots of detailed information at this web address, including links to an unabridged set of these slides and the speaker notes. As I said, it's open sourced. Feel free to cannibalize it, use it in any way you can. We're here, we want you to learn from our mistakes and the lessons we've learned from our customer base. And finally, if you've got an incident response process but you feel you're lacking something in terms of tools, PagerDuty is here to help. You can sign up for a free 14-day trial, give it a spin, see if it actually helps you respond more efficiently to your incidents. And right there, I will stop. I hope you all found it interesting, and I'll give it back to Alec, see if we've got any questions.
Thank you very much indeed, Matt. Great webinar. There's quite a few questions coming in. Just before we go to the questions, I would just remind everyone, just if you've got a question, please type it into the chat box and we'll do our best to answer as many as possible. Also, just a reminder that we are going to be making a recording available of the webinar afterwards. Duke will send a link, so if you want to listen again or share it with your colleagues, you'll be able to do that. So I'll start, read out some of the questions to you, Matt, and we can take them as they come in. First question is, how do you train new joiners before they go on the on-call rota?
Oh, that's a good one. So yeah, we have an onboarding process within PagerDuty whereby, first of all, there's a sort of a basic training session so people understand what the process should look like. And then it's about onboarding them gradually. So effectively, in terms of how our instances are run, we have a separate Slack channel where you can actually watch what's going on. So that's a good way to understand how the gurus actually do it. And then as you get comfortable with that, then you can actually ask being put into a backup or a shadow rotation so that you can actually shadow. So again, not actively participating, but getting the real feel for a real live situation. And then finally, once you're actually feeling confident enough, then you can actually be onboarded and become a proper incident commander. I mean, the important thing to note is, and again, where we find we've had a lot of success, is making sure that the incident commanders, especially the new ones, know they're never alone. There's always a support network behind them they can fall back on to help them during an incident.
Thank you. Next question from Kevin. How should strong objections be handled by the incident commander?
So again, if they are valid objections, then at that stage you would go back and you would review other alternatives. If someone's got, if you have to trust your SMEs, if you find, that one of the SMEs highlights a problem or an issue, a potential issue, or an outcome that wasn't necessarily expected, then it's on the IC to sort of digest that, take it on board, and then potentially revert back to the options that were available and pick a different path. Yeah. Ultimately, though, it's got to be a strong objection, and you still need to make a decision and move forwards. Because again, nothing gets fixed without making a decision one way or the other.
Thanks, Matt. I've got another question. It's sort of in two parts. Is the incident commander the person who is on the first line of support, or first line reports to the incident commander and incident commander leads on the issue? And the second part of the question, also, can you explain the internal and customer liaison and their role once more?
Right, okay. Let's just wheel that one back a little bit. So give it to me again, one bit at a time, and I'll answer it.
Okay. Part one, is the incident commander the person who is on the first line of support, or first line reports to the incident commander, and incident commander leads on the issue?
Right, okay. So very much depends. Again, typical technical answer there, depends. So if I look at how we do it, so again, we have automated systems that can identify a level of severity based on how degraded one or more of our business metrics are. If we cross that threshold at the time of actually triggering the incident, then we will automatically get an incident commander on the line. So effectively, they are almost the first ones to arrive on the call. However, you can have other situations where it's an issue that may start off in one particular part of the environment, which doesn't look that critical, in which case a level 1 support person might end up dealing with it to start with. And then as it becomes clearer, or the situation evolves, or the situation further degrades and becomes more dire, at that stage, the first responder, realizing that it's not a problem that they can fix on their own, needs the input of additional teams. At that stage, we would then trigger a major incident, and the incident command would be brought in and would then assume control of the situation. I think that answers the first section.
Thanks. The second part again, Matt, was just asking if you can please explain again the internal and customer liaison and their role.
Right, okay, yeah. So a relatively new role within PagerDuty. What we found is that we needed someone internal that could manage communications to our executives, to product owners. So again, giving them timely updates, understand, or again, deal with some of the questions that may be coming in from those key stakeholders. So again, but they're all about the internal sort of communications.
Thanks, Matt. Next question from Hattie. Do you have a dedicated chat service, like making use of Slack for a call?
Yeah, we do actually. It's one of the ways we can actually trigger an incident or a major incident within our organisation. We've got a Slack command, and we use Slack a lot. But again, I've seen different things in different organisations. I've seen different chat tools. I've even seen big red buttons in some offices. You just need a way to trigger that. But yeah, again, as a platform, we're all about integrating with people's existing tool sets, their existing workflows. So yeah, we use Slack, anything like that.
Thank you, Matt. Next question from Roman. Read it back again. Do you do any adjustments to your on-call process during harder times, like for example during Christmas or when there are more rota changes?
I'd say it probably depends. I mean, again, if we have a major incident, we're looking to do the postmortem straight afterwards. If we review that, I mean, again, on the one hand, we're looking for what broke, but we're always also looking by the construction of a timeline. We're looking for where did we lose time in the response. And again, if there's a valid reason to go and change something, we'll do it there and then, because ultimately we don't want to get hit by the same incident again. And just because it's Christmas shouldn't make a difference.
Okay. Another question just come in. Can you tell us how allowing anyone to trigger an incident impacted your teams? For example, did you see a sudden increase in Sev1s?
So that's a really good question. I think that's where a lot of people get quite nervous, the idea that anyone can trigger one. What we've found personally is that people are actually pretty good at policing themselves. If I think back, I've only seen 2 sort of false positives in all the time that I've been at PagerDuty. And again, the great thing is, coming back to the point around the practice, just because the instance turned out not to be a Sev1, still treat it like a major incident. Use it as free practice time. That way you're still getting something out of it, even if it is a false positive.
Thank you. Another question, stroke observation, I guess, is that this looks great for large organisations, but do we need this type of process and hierarchy if we're a small team?
So the quick answer to that one is no. However, as a general sort of rule, I think, first of all, any organisation, no matter how small you are, you still need the definitions. Yeah, so you might not have the hierarchy, but in terms of actually sitting down and understanding what an incident is for you, what a major incident is, then being able to define a process in terms of, well, how are we going to respond to it, I think that's valuable in any organisation. If you're about protecting your business, you need an incident response process. And I think going beyond that, if you do nothing else, have an incident commander, so that during that incident, you've at least got someone that will make a decision. Yeah, rather than, I mean, again, we saw it in the early days at PagerDuty where, without having that incident commander that was readily accessible and would always come to the major incidents, we had to fall back on one of the founders to make a decision. Again, it impacts your ability to respond and to recover. So yeah, maybe not the whole hierarchy, that can grow with you as a business, but you definitely want some of the other sort of takeaways, no matter what size your business is.
Thank you. I think we've got time for just one more question. The question is, we struggled to recruit incident managers and commanders. Do you have any tips? Yeah,
absolutely. So I think the first one would be don't restrict yourself to highly technical people. Doing so, you limit the pool of candidates. And I think tied into that is that, well, it's two things tied into it actually. First of all, the incident commander role is a stressful role in some respects, in the sense that you are making the decisions. You know, you are the highest point of authority. So enforcing that on someone really doesn't work. They've got to want to do it. So again, you need as wide a pool of candidates as possible, so you actually get people that are comfortable with being put in that situation. And I think beyond that, if I think about PagerDuty, if I look at the characteristics you want in a really good incident commander, some of our best incident commanders actually aren't really that technical. They're product managers, project officers, that sort of thing, whereby they have a high level view of how our product works and they know the various people inside the business. But ultimately, their lack of deep technical knowledge stops them from gravitating towards trying to be a fixer. Makes them far more effective as an incident commander. I think that's about it.
Yeah, I think that brings us right on time. Thank you very much indeed, Matt. And just again, a reminder to everybody, we'll be making a link available, so you'll be able to view the slides and listen to the presentation again. So, Matt, all that remains is to thank you very much and thank everybody for joining us today.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye for now.